What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to do Fantastic Four X-Men, or better known as 4X, because this is going to continue our coverage over the dawn of X era of X-Men comics. Now, with that being said, we should have known this crossover was going to happen. And the reason why, because back in the 1980s, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, they had crossed over before. I want to say twice. And even in the Ultimate Marvel universe as well. And so with that being said, with the new era of X-Men comics, we should have saw this coming. Now, with that being said, the other reason why this is happening is to answer the big question. Is Franklin Richards actually a mutant? The son of Reed and Susan. Is he actually a mutant? Now, for years and years and years in Marvel Comics, he was known as a mutant. And on top of that, he was known as an Omega level mutant. And so that's the big question right now. Is he actually a mutant? So let's go ahead and dive into this storyline. Now, the opening pages of this book is really more of Marvel kind of reminding us what has been going on with Franklin Richards, how he is the son of both Susan and Reed Richards. And on top of that, after Secret Wars, him and his parents and his sister, they kind of worked on rebuilding the multiverse because he had the ability to create universe to help remake the multiverse. But of course, that all took place right after Secret Wars, but right before we got into Dan Slott's Fantastic Four. But one of the big things that has been happening in Dan Slott's Fantastic Four is that Franklin Richards' powers is beginning to go away. And with them going away, the big question is now, why? Why are they going away? And apparently, no one can figure out the reason why his powers are going away. But then we jump over to COPPA, where we actually pick up with Kitty Pryde and her Marauders arriving back to the island. Now, with that being said, we actually pick up with Kitty Pryde, and this is really Marvel telling us that Kitty Pryde is going to be the other main character of this book alongside with Franklin Richards. And the reason why I say that's a good idea for Marvel is because in the original crossover for the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, Kitty Pryde was the main problem. Not in a bad way, but not in a good way, but she was the reason why the X-Men and the Fantastic Four had a crossover. And so, of course, it makes sense to bring her back over for this storyline and make her be the second main character behind Franklin Richards for this storyline. Now, you do have Kitty Pryde say goodbye to her team, especially Storm, but that's the moment she tells us that she does have a meeting with Charles Xavier. Now, when Kitty Pryde arrives in the room to have the meeting with Charles Xavier, Magneto is also there as well. Now, of course, you do have Charles Xavier and Magneto tell Kitty Pryde what their plan is or why they're having this meeting. And of course, it's about Franklin Richards because they want to recruit Franklin Richards over to their island. Now, of course, they've been waiting for the right moment, but of course, the reason why they never asked Franklin to join their side is for a lot of different reasons. But the last and most important reason is because Reed, Sue, Valeria, and also Franklin, they were all traveling across the multiverse as a way to help recreate the multiverse. And so now with them being back in the main Marvel universe, right now you actually have Charles say, we need to bring Franklin over to our side. It's time for us to actually recruit him. On top of that, we also come to find out that something is wrong with his powers. Like his powers are slowly going away. And that is huge because Franklin Richards is an Omega level mutant. Something or someone so powerful that we should have on our side. And so with that being said, you do have Charles and Magneto tell Kitty Pryde, can you try to recruit Franklin Richards to come over to our island? One, because he's a mutant, and two, we could possibly help save his powers before they go away completely. But getting over to the home of the Fantastic Four, we actually do see Reed right now studying and trying to figure out how can he actually help his son? Because right now, when it comes to Reed, he wants to help his son keep his powers, but at the same time, he can't find a way to actually help Franklin keep his powers. And so with that, you have Reed say, listen, with these last few tests, I still can't figure out why in the world your powers are going away. Now, of course, this does upset Franklin a lot because when Franklin looks at his father, Reed, he believes that his father should be able to figure out almost anything in the world, especially when it comes to his son, because Reed is looked at by other characters in the Marvel Universe as the smartest character in the Marvel Universe, only being rivaled by Doctor Doom and Valeria, his own daughter. And so right now you have Franklin just storm off angry at his father because his father is unable to actually figure out what is wrong with him. Now you do have Sue explain why Franklin was like that to Reed, because she's kind of like, you have to realize for years and years and years, Franklin had those powers and he was doing impossible things left and right. And now you're possibly telling him those powers are going to go away. And he feels like when those powers go away, he will be nothing. Because he looks at the rest of us as special and he believed the only reason why he was special because of those powers he had. But with those powers going away, he feels like he's no longer special. And that is why you had Franklin kind of upset with Reed. But on top of that, he looks at Reed as somebody who should be able to figure out any kind of problem at all. But then we see Franklin Richards having lunch with Ben Grimm, the Thing. Now, this conversation is also very important because remember, when it comes to Franklin, he looked at his father as somebody who should be able to fix anything in the world. And that idea carries over to this conversation right here because you actually have Franklin talking to Ben Grimm like, hey, my father should have been able to figure out how to turn you back a long time ago, but he hasn't. And so with that being said, is Franklin kind of saying that he feels like his father actually knows how to save Franklin Powers, but also knows how to turn Ben Grimm back to normal, but for some strange reason, Reed Richards is not doing it. And so with that, that idea will actually be planted in the mind of Ben Grimm. Now, that idea has been in Ben Grimm's mind for years in Marvel Comics because it was kind of believed to Ben Grimm that Reed knows how to turn Ben Grimm back to normal, but he just doesn't do it. And so with that, and now Franklin kind of bringing that idea back to Ben, but also now to Franklin as well, is Franklin saying, I believe my father is withholding the ideas or the possibility of actually helping us. But that is the moment you do have Johnny Storm walk into the room and say, hey, y'all gotta come back home. We got some visitors. And of course, this is a very important meeting. And of course, the visitors are no other than the X-Men coming by to talk to the Fantastic Four about Franklin Richards. Now, at this point, the Fantastic Four, they know about the mutant race and how they formed their own nation on COPPA. And so with that, it's kind of like, listen, you guys have done so many crazy things over the last few months after you have formed your nation. And now here you are, and you're trying to take my son away from me. Now, of course, while tension is high, you do have Kitty Pryde walk up, and as she walks up, you have Franklin, Ben Grimm, and the Human Torch just getting back home. And when they get back home, Franklin and Kitty Pryde, they do hug. Because Franklin and Kitty Pryde, they do have a tight bond with one another, thanks to the first crossover the X-Men and the Fantastic Four had back in 1987. But either way, of course, with Kitty Pryde hugging Franklin, you do have everyone stop and realize, okay, maybe we can have a peaceful conversation inside our house to talk about Franklin Richards and the idea of him being a mutant. Now, of course, this meeting does not go as planned as everyone was hoping it would go because tension is still high. Because with that being said, you do have Susan and Reed still saying no to the idea of Franklin going with the X-Men back to the island. Because when it comes to Susan, she believes that her children should have a modern life or a modern life, live with their parents and living with their siblings, not on an island with a bunch of people who they're not related to at all. And so with that being said, you do have Susan kind of saying, no, he's not going with you. He's my son. I gave birth to him. He's going to stay with me. Now, you do have Charles try to explain that, listen, we know that his powers are disappearing. And with his powers disappearing, we could possibly help him keep those powers. Or we could work with you as a way to help your son keep his powers. Now, again, Susan is not listening because she's kind of like that protective mother. You're trying to take my child away from me? Not going to happen. And so she does use her powers on Magneto. And you do have Charles kind of give Reed a threat saying, if you don't tell your wife to let go of Magneto, I will use my powers on you. And you have Reed say, no. We are not going to use powers in this room at all. We're going to have a discussion and figure out what is the best move for my son. Now, of course, you do have Kitty Pryde as Franklin if he wants to leave, because right now, all of this mess by the adults is just too much. And so you do have Kitty Pryde take Franklin away so that he can have some time to think to himself. Now, you do have Kitty Pryde take Franklin Richards over to a nearby park as a way to clear his mind. But while being at the park, you do have Kitty Pryde kind of give Franklin the idea of she's not going to force him to choose the X-Men, but she's not going to be mad at him if he does choose the Fantastic Four. Whatever he chooses, she'll be okay with it. And I kind of like that because when you look at the adults, they're not actually trying to think, what does Franklin want? And so it's really more of Kitty saying, I know what you're going through is a lot for a teenager, and right now you have to make a big decision. And with that big decision, I'm not going to force your hand. So whatever you choose, don't worry, you'll still have me at least on your side. Now, Kitty Pryde and Franklin, they only have a short moment to themselves because that is the moment you do have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men appear. And of course, when they do appear, they do begin the process of actually fighting against one another. And of course, we saw this coming a mile away because when it comes to crossovers between two teams or two characters, there are some times they do fight against one another. And so, of course, we have the Fantastic Four fighting against the X-Men right now in the middle of the park over Franklin Richards, but no one is basically giving Franklin the chance to explain what he wants to possibly do. But that is the moment you do have Franklin begin the process of saying, you know what, I'm tired of no one listening to me and I made up my mind. And so that is the moment you actually do see Franklin run towards a Krakoan gate. And when he does, he believes that because he is a mutant, he'll be teleported over to the island. But that is the moment when he runs through the gate, he just runs through it. But he doesn't teleport through it. He just ends up on the other side of the gate in the park. And so everyone is wondering, wait, what's going on? Because Franklin Richards is a mutant and he should have the ability to actually use that gate. And so with him running through the gate, he should have teleported over to the island, but he didn't. And that is the moment we kind of find out that Reed Richards did something to the body of Franklin Richards, where he hides the mutant genes from the Krakoan gates. Because usually when a mutant uses a gate, they have the ability to teleport over. But you have Reed tell Franklin that I use some tech as a way to hide your mutant DNA or your mutant gene from the gates so that you'll be unable to actually access it as a way to help protect you. Because to Reed Richards, when he looks at the X-Men, he looks at them as a group of crazy people right now who have made their own nation. And so with that being said, you have Franklin get upset because now it does seem like to Franklin that his dad is not actually trying to help him, but of course control him. And so you have Franklin run off angry, and you have the X-Men kind of walk away because the X-Men are going to use this moment right here as a way to make Franklin believe that the right path is to choose the X-Men and to go with the X-Men. Now, you do have Franklin actually tell Valeria what their father has done to them. And so with that being said, you do have Franklin and Valeria kind of realize that they usually kind of disobey their parents. And I mean, a lot of times they do disobey their parents. But either way, now you're going to have these two characters disobey their parents one more time in this storyline, what is going to lead into a lot more problems later on in this video. But then we get another page where we see Ben Grimm telling Reed Richards that basically Reed Richards, what he did was wrong. And what he did was so wrong that it's okay to pull moves like that on Ben, Johnny, and Susan, but not okay to pull on Franklin, his own child. And so it's Ben saying, do not do that again to Franklin nor Valeria. But then we pick up with the Marauders. Now remember, the Marauders work for the Hellfire Club. And usually the Marauders go on different missions as a way to kind of help out COPPA and the Hellfire Club. So for example, there are occasions where they go around try to save mutants from countries that do not allow mutants to leave their country to join COPPA. And so right now you have the Marauders going to a specific location as a way to save some mutants. But that is the moment they hear some noise, and you have Kitty Pryde open up her part of the ship to find out that Franklin and Valeria have snuck onto her ship. And they're all like, hey, we know that you're going back to the island. I chose the mutants over my family. I want to join COPPA. But that's the moment you have Kitty Pryde say, but we're not going back to the island right now. Like, we're on course to go somewhere else to help save some innocent mutants. But that is the moment you have the ship be under attack. And with the ship being under attack, of course, it's captured by no other than Dr. Doom. And of course, Dr. Doom wants something, and we have no idea what he wants. Now, in the opening pages of the second chapter, we actually do pick up with Cyclops calling up Susan Storm, because right now Susan realized that both of her children are missing. Now, neither side realized that right now the children are actually with the Marauders. On top of that, they have no idea the Marauders are fighting against Dr. Doom. But either way, though, you do have Cyclops tell Susan Storm that his goal is to actually find the children. But here comes his big mistake, because he keeps talking about Franklin Richards and not Valeria Richards, because Valeria has no powers at all. She's basically a regular human being. And so you have Cyclops keep mentioning how important it is for him to find Franklin because Franklin is a mutant. And so you have Susan get angry because it does seem like Cyclops only cares for one person, and that one person is Franklin. And so she's kind of like, are you telling me you're basically not going to help me find my daughter because she is a regular human? That right there is not okay at all. And so with that, you have her just end the call instantly between her and Cyclops. Now, after the call has ended, you do have Reed try his best to calm down his wife, because he knows what his wife is planning to do, which is to go attack the island. But here comes the problem, though. COPPA is an island that's basically a nation that's recognized by other nations, meaning that if the Fantastic Four actually go over there and attack, it could lead to a lot of legal problems for them down the road, something they should want to avoid. But of course, you have Susan tell Reed, no, my children are missing, and I feel like they know where my children are at. And so you have Susan, Ben, and Johnny leave Reed behind. But you have Susan tell Reed, you have two choices. Come help me or stay here. But hopefully you choose the right choice. But getting back over to the Marauders, who are basically fighting against Dr. Doom, this fight is very short-lived. It is literally one page and one page only. And with that being said, we do see Kitty Pryde try her best to actually attack Dr. Doom. But that's the moment she's knocked out. And when she's knocked out, And when she wakes up, she is confronted by Franklin, Valeria, and also Doctor Doom. Now, this is the moment she comes to realize that everybody is having dinner. Now, her team, the Marauders, they're being held somewhere else. We have no idea where. But either way, though, you do have Doctor Doom kind of tell Kitty Pryde that the mutants that she was looking for actually came from Latveria. But then those mutants had apparently changed their mind and decided to stay with Latveria. Now, here comes the big thing though. You would think that we are actually in Latveria right now with this story, but we're not. Instead, we are actually on Doom Island, an island that Doom owns that's away from Latveria. And so with that being said, you have Dr. Doom say he loves to use Doom Island for different plans, but to leave Latveria out of those plans. But with that being said, he does have people on this island as well. But here comes the big catch though. You do have Dr. Doom say the plan he has right now is to hopefully find a cure for Franklin Richards, because when it comes to Dr. Doom, his main goal is to outsmart Reed Richards, and he knows that Reed is having a hard time actually curing his son. And so you have Dr. Doom tell Franklin, Valeria, and Kitty that he'll be able to actually find a cure for Franklin Richards. But then we jump back over to Krakoa, and we do pick up with the Quiet Council right now trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Now remember, the Quiet Council is basically a group of mutants who come together to make big time decisions for the nation of Krakoa. And so with that, right now they're trying to figure out what happened to Franklin and Valeria. On top of that, they realize something else must have happened to Kitty Pryde and her team of the Marauders. Now, that is the moment you do have Cerebro actually tell Charles Xavier the possible location of where Franklin and Valeria and the Marauders could be at. And so with that, you actually have Charles Xavier and the rest of the Quiet Council thinking about sending a team out there to go find the missing team members, including Franklin and Valeria. But that is the moment you have Cyclops say, before we send anybody away, we actually need to think of a plan to defend this island, because the Fantastic Four are a very powerful group. Now, you have Nightcrawler point out one thing, and that one thing is Reed Richards, because he is one of the top 3 smartest people in Marvel Comics. And with a mind like that, he could actually do some damage to this island. But while you have the Quiet Council talking, they do mention the Invisible Woman and her ability to turn herself invisible and other characters around her invisible. And that is the moment you have the team realize the Fantastic Four are already there on the island. They realize the Fantastic Four has snuck onto the island. But getting back over to Doom Island, we actually do pick up basically right now Dr. Doom explaining that he does have some tech around the island that was able to cancel out the powers of Kitty Pryde, meaning that she can't use her powers right now, which she would use as a way to fight against Dr. Doom, but to also find her team and to hopefully escape the island. But of course, it's Dr. Doom canceling out her powers as a way to say, I want to show you what I'm up to, what I'm trying to do. And what he is trying to do right now is to actually find a way to cure Franklin Richards. And so he does show Kitty Pryde, Valeria, and Franklin the machine that he wants to use to actually help Franklin out. He even says that once the machine is used on Franklin, it could basically unlock his true potential. Now, even on top of that, I do want to mention one more thing. When it comes to Valeria Richards, she kind of looks at Dr. Doom like an uncle. Like that one of those uncles you have in your family no one else likes but you like. And so when it comes to Valeria, she kind of likes Dr. Doom as an uncle because he's also as smart as she and her father, and he kind of rivals her on a lot of different things. But either way, you do have Dr. Doom say, my goal is to use this machine to hopefully find a cure for you. But getting back over to the island, we do see right now the Fantastic Four fighting against the X-Men. Now, in reality, it is really more of the Fantastic Four trying to escape. They're trying to get away from the X-Men because right now the X-Men are trying to capture them. And so with that, you do have the Fantastic Four finally find a way to get off the island, of course, with their Fantastic Four car and the powers of the Invisible Woman. But once they do leave, we kind of find out they do have the location of where Kitty Pryde, Franklin, and Valeria and the rest of the Marauders could possibly be at. And of course, that means that they're going there right now. And so with them going there, you do have the X-Men realize they need to form a team as well to go to the location to hopefully save Kitty Pryde, the Marauders, and hopefully Franklin as well, who is also a mutant. But back on Doom Island, we do see Kitty Pryde being able to find the rest of her team to tell her team what deal she made with Dr. Doom. And of course, the deal was that she will not try to stop him from trying to help out Franklin Richards. Now, of course, the rest of her team is kind of like, are you crazy? You're going to let Dr. Doom work on that kid? But at the same time, it's her saying, listen, we don't have a choice. We could try to save him, but we could possibly start a war with our nation and Latveria, and we don't want that. On top of that, if there is a possibility that he could bring back one of the most or the most powerful mutant on the world, then why in the world would I stop him? But then we pick up with Dr. Doom, who is right now in his laboratory getting ready. And the reason why I say getting ready is not to get ready to actually help out Franklin Richards. Instead, it is Dr. Doom actually getting ready to do something else. Apparently, he's getting prepared for something big. And it could be like the idea he knows that the X-Men and the Fantastic Four could possibly be coming to his island to get Franklin and Valeria. And so right now we see him building a bunch of robots as a way to possibly protect the island from the Fantastic Four and the X-Men as well. Now, when we get into the third chapter of the storyline, we actually do pick up with the X-Men chasing after the Fantastic Four. And of course, you do have Charles Xavier tell Cyclops to be careful because right now they're trying to avoid a war between them and the Fantastic Four. But they have no idea they're about to try to avoid another war with Latveria very soon. But either way, it's Cyclops and the X-Men going after the Fantastic Four. And so that is when we actually get into another battle between the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Now with this battle, it does go on for a few pages. The difference between this battle and the one we saw earlier is that this one mostly takes place in the sky because the Fantastic Four were trying to fly over to the location of where Kitty Pryde, Franklin, Valeria, and possibly the Marauders could be at, which we know is Doom Island, and the X-Men were following them. But with their battle, of course, you have both sides actually crash land on the island. Now, once they do crash land on the island, of course, you do have Emma Frost being able to take over the mind of Susan Storm as a way to stop everyone from fighting against one another. And of course, they realize that both teams are now on this random island. And so you do have Dr. Doom come out of nowhere to basically greet both the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Now, when he does that, he does tell both teams, hey, listen, you're on my island. You're on Latveria soil. And with that being said, I could technically say that you guys are right now declaring war against me, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of the children. And that is the moment you have Kitty Pryde tell both sides that she had really made a deal with Dr. Doom to let Dr. Doom work on Franklin Richards. Now, this is another huge problem. Definitely for Susan Storm, because for Susan, she is a protective mother. And when you hear the words, hey, I made a deal for this villain of your guys to basically run some tests on your child, it's kind of like, you did what? You made a deal with this villain to kind of run tests on my child without my permission. It's very huge, especially when it's Doctor Doom, the Fantastic Four worst enemy. And so with that, you have Susan and Reed angry at Kitty Pryde. Now, Magneto is also mad because to Magneto, he feels like Kitty Pryde does not speak for the mutant nation, COPPA. Instead, him and the rest of the Quiet Council does. And so he hates the idea that she even thought it would be a good idea to make a deal with Doctor Doom. But of course, you have Charles come out and say, no, what she did, what Kitty Pryde did was right. Because if there is a possibility that he could actually help Franklin Richards, maybe, just maybe, we should see what he could do. Now, of course, Reed and Sue, they're very upset, but it seems like they really don't have a choice right now. Doctor Doom is going to work on Franklin Richards. Now, you do have Reed go find his children in the laboratory that belongs to Doctor Doom, and right as soon as he walks in, he tells his kids it is time to go, thinking that his kids are actually going to leave with him. But right now, his children, they do not trust him at all. And so you have Franklin tell Reed, no, I'm not going anywhere. If there is a possibility that Doctor Doom could be able to find a cure for the reason why I'm losing my powers, then I'm going to stay here and give this man a try. And so that is the moment you have Reed tell Victor, aka Doctor Doom, that he needs to look over every single piece of this equipment that Doctor Doom is going to use to make sure there is no possibility of a trap coming down the road. He even asked Hank McCoy, the Beast, to actually help study this machine to make sure everything is safe and found. Now, getting over to the rest of the X-Men that came to the island of Doom and also the rest of the Fantastic Four, you do have the X-Men talking to among themselves over the idea that they also need to save the other mutants. Because remember, the reason why Doctor Doom was able to capture Kitty Pryde and the Marauders was because they believed they were going out into the ocean to save some random mutants, but those mutants belonged to Latveria, and apparently out of nowhere, they changed their mind to stay on Latveria. And so right now, you have the X-Men saying that while Doctor Doom is working on Franklin Richards, they are going to try to find the other mutants that apparently on Latveria who could possibly be under Doctor Doom's mind control. And so, of course, they do ask for help from the Fantastic Four to find these other mutants. But getting back over to the laboratory that belongs to Doctor Doom, we do see Reed and Hank McCoy had basically looked over almost every single piece of the machine that Doctor Doom plans to use on Franklin Richards. And of course, it's Reed saying how amazed he is by the machine that Doctor Doom has made. Now, with that also being said though, that is the moment you have Marvel tell us when it comes to Latveria, does Latveria actually recognize Krakoa as a nation in the world? And of course they do, but Doctor Doom does not like the idea of how they're running their nation and kind of says that he predicts this nation would not last as long as Charles Xavier and the rest of the mutants think it is going to last. And so now we know that Latveria does look at Krakoa as a nation, but at the same time, Doctor Doom does not like the way they run their nation though. Now, getting back over to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four who are looking for the lost mutants, they were able to actually find those lost mutants. Now, this becomes the crucial moment that is actually going to change the story for us. And what I mean is that you do have our heroes say like, hey, listen, we're here to save you and take you back over to our island. But of course, these mutants, they don't want to leave. They want to stay on Krakoa, and that is huge. And so with that being said, you actually have the X-Men confused on why in the world they want to stay here on Doom Island. But while they're talking to the mutants, that is the moment you actually have the X-Men get attacked by some Doom bots. Now, this is going to be a very crucial moment, like I said, because while you have the X-Men fighting against the Doom boss, and while you have Dr. Doom begin the process of turning on the machine to actually hopefully cure Franklin Richards. When Wolverine kills off one of the Doombots, we come to find out it's not a Doombot. Instead, it is actually someone inside one of the many armors of Dr. Doom pretending to be Dr. Doom or pretending to be a Doombot. But with the death of that person right there, of course that means Wolverine had just committed murder on another island that's not part of COPPA. It's another nation. And so Dr. Doom was able to detect the idea that someone had just died on his island. And so now he says, because you killed someone on my island, one of my people, you have basically declared war. And that is the moment you do have a bunch of robots just pop out of the water. And when these robots pop out of the water, of course, it's Dr. Doom now saying, because Wolverine has committed murder on my island in my nation, of course, that means you guys are basically declaring war. And with that, I'm going to use these robots as a way to wipe out the X-Men and the Fantastic Four on my island. And so when we get into the 4th chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with everyone freaking out because they realize what Dr. Doom has technically done. And of course, to Hank McCoy, he feels like that Dr. Doom has just declared war against all mutants. And so with that, you have Hank McCoy say he has to go and basically help the rest of the X-Men deal with this problem. Because of course, now it seems like Dr. Doom has just declared war against all mutants, and that right there is very huge. Now that is the moment we actually do pick up with Reed and Sue right now trying to save Franklin. Because right now with Dr. Doom going through his master plan, of course they do wonder if Dr. Doom has something else up his sleeve that could possibly affect Franklin. Now you do have Kitty Pryde also try to save Franklin, but that is the moment you have Dr. Doom also stop her, but then continues to tell Kitty Pryde that he knows more about her powers than she does. And what I mean is that, so here's my example. If you go over to Ultimate Marvel, Kitty Pryde in that universe right there, she had the same ability as her main Marvel Universe counterpart, where she was able to actually phase through walls. But on top of that, she was able to make herself a very heavy, solid object as well. And so this is Dr. Doom taking that concept and bringing it over to the main Marvel universe and saying, Kitty Pryde, you can phase through walls so easily. But on top of that, you're also able to make yourself a very heavy, solid object that could not be hurt so easily. Now you do have Sue leave Reed behind because Emma Frost does call up Sue and say, hey, we need your help. And so this is Sue trusting her husband will be able to actually save their son from Dr. Doom. Now, this actually does lead us into the big moment of the book because while you have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men fighting against the robots that belong to Dr. Doom, you do have Franklin Richard powers begin to go out of control because whatever machine that Dr. Doom had put Franklin in, it of course is pushing his powers beyond their limits or their current limits. And of course, it's Dr. Doom trying to unlock the true potential of Franklin Richard powers. Now, of course, you do have Franklin wanting to stop because he realized that Dr. Doom could possibly be up to something. And of course, it could lead to the end of all life across the world if they're not careful. Now, with that being said, though, you do have Dr. Doom continue to push Franklin Richards. Now, at first, Dr. Doom kind of made Franklin believe that he actually cared for him. But that is the moment you have Dr. Doom say, no, I need you to keep pushing yourself because you can unlock your true potential and it can help both of us out. And once again, it shows that Dr. Doom only cares for himself. But that is the moment you do have Kitty Pryde reappear, being able to kind of fight against the control that Dr. Doom had put on her, to be able to talk to Franklin as a way to calm him down. And after a couple more panels, we do see Kitty Pryde able to calm down Franklin Richards. And of course, it does shut down all the robots that were surrounding the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Now, right after that moment right there, the story actually calms down a whole lot. And what I mean by that is, you kind of have everyone finally relaxing. And honestly, once again, it's one of those stories where if both sides had actually sat down and talked to one another and actually listened to Franklin Richards, all of this could have been avoided. But of course, it wasn't, because for some strange reason, the heroes in the Marvel Universe, they want to fight against one another instead of actually talking to one another. But either way though, after you have everyone calm down and relax, you do have everyone go their separate ways. Now, you do have Dr. Doom try to declare war against Krakoa, but you didn't have Charles Xavier remind Dr. Doom that the mutants that were on his island, on Doom Island, they were basically kidnapped by Dr. Doom. They were on their way over to Krakoa, and you kidnapped them and you brainwashed them. And that right there is a huge no-no, because even though they had not made it over to Krakoa, they were technically part of the mutant nation. They're part of Krakoa. They are a citizen of Krakoa. And so with that being said, is Charles Xavier saying, you cannot declare war on us, but technically we could declare war on you, because thanks to your whole plan, a mutant died tonight. And so with that, we could possibly declare war, but we're not going to. But either way, you do have everyone just go home and go their separate ways. And so then the story does jump 3 weeks later, where we do actually see that the X-Men are able to run some tests on Franklin Richards to see what in the world is going on with his powers. Now, these tests are not done only because he has to get back home in time for dinner, but this moment right here is actually going to be very important. But back at the home of the Fantastic Four, we actually do see Valeria talking to Dr. Doom. Now, this is very important as well, because it's kind of Marvel kind of setting up things down the road, but to also remind us that Valeria actually likes Dr. Doom, because she looks at him as an uncle, as somebody who rivals her intelligence, because Valeria is just like Dr. Doom and Reed Richards, one of the smartest people on the planet. And so she's up there in the top 3. But either way though, it's her kind of like talking to Dr. Doom, but realizing he has more plans up his sleeves. The question is though, what are those plans? Now, to go ahead and wrap up this video, we actually do have Magneto and Charles Xavier going to meet up with Reed Richards. Now, this is actually very important. And the reason why, because you have Magneto and Charles Xavier actually upset with Reed Richards. And the reason why they're upset with him is because what he had made, which was that device that basically was able to cloak the mutant gene in Franklin Richards to basically make him a human being. And so with that, Magneto and Charles Xavier, they're very concerned that Reed could down the road mass produce that device, not by him or by someone else, and it could actually lead into the idea of a bunch of mutants having their DNA cloaked and changed into a human DNA. Because in the notes of Reed Richards, he was able to find out that he has the ability to remove the mutant gene. And with the mutant gene being removed, it will make a mutant a regular human being. And right now it could mean that Franklin Richards could possibly be a regular human being now. But with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down the road and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.